Hello and welcome back to our Dark Cosmos campaign, a Scum and Villainy actual play following the story of three spacefaring scoundrels as they rebel against the controlling factions and face down the traumas of the past in our homebrew universe of Erilia. My name is Xeno, I'm playing the role of Game Master for this campaign, and with me at the table is one of my fellow Placeholder NPCs.
Howdy, Sam, only Sam, and I'm playing today as I'm always playing, Dr. Algernon Blue, call sign Kentucky, and he's the medic of the koi fish, although not quite yet. This is going to be a bit of a dive into how we got to this point, and I guess really diving into the scum in Scum and Villainy.
As you said, this will be a backstory episode, hence why the rest of the crew isn't here, and we'll dive into where Algernon came from, specifically from within the Coop.
Yes, yeah, that's right. As the last episodes pointed out, obviously, Dr. Blue is no stranger to the Coop and knew its inner workings relatively intimately because of all his time spent there experimenting on people.
And this would be a great segue. If you want to experiment a bit more, give us a follow so you can keep up with our latest releases.
That was seamless. Well done. That's an excellent plug.
And we'll dive straight into the episode. We begin this episode on the day of Bloomage, a day of remembrance embraced by the many folk that call Erilia home. Stories are passed down through the generations. Stories of an ark, a massive starship said to contain the last remaining humans fleeing from a calamity so great it destroyed their home planet. A vessel trapped just across the event horizon of Erilia's most notable black hole. With each passing year, we are reminded of those lost souls as their last emergency broadcast repeats itself, emanating from that black hole. The frequency between each repetition increases by a few minutes every time we receive it. This day of Bloomage is a day full of celebrations. The streets and storefronts are decorated with flowers, many just buds in the process of blooming, eventually becoming dazzling display of colours and scents. A day where families come together, bringing along a shared hope. A hope that one day those lost souls will also make it home again. Until that day arrives, we do our best to remember them and each other. But today, we're not at those celebrations. Instead, we follow a man who has buried himself deep within the confines of the Coop. Sam, where will we find Algernon on such a festive afternoon?
Yeah, no rest for the incredibly wicked. Algernon probably didn't even register that it was today up until he realized a bit of a decrease in personnel within the Coop. Even a lot of these questionable characters have families that they celebrate these things with. Very bare-bones skeleton crew, which Algernon may have not noticed on his way from his sleeping quarters to one of the operating theaters. Probably the one on the lower level, closer to the artifact vault. I feel like Algernon would be much more interested in the more extreme experimentation using, access to the artifact vault.
You've probably spent the majority of your day analysing reports, looking over artifacts. You've kind of just lost yourself in amongst the work and you're starting to feel a bit thirsty.
Yeah.
What's Algernon's beverage of choice?
Beverage of choice will probably be some sort of I feel like it probably comes back to a little bit of nostalgia for his time as a kid on the frontier. Maybe it'd be some sort of juice or a hardy flora that you see often in the frontier where, just the freshly terraformed areas of planets and that kind of stuff. So it's something akin to maybe a cactus or something like that. Maybe some sort of aloe vera flavored sap infused beverage. Something he can drink readily and is somewhat healthy for him that he just drinks en masse.
I think you look over and your current glass of cactus juice is empty. As you get up and make your way to the kitchenette, something feels a little off. You don't think you're alone. There's a feeling like you're being watched.
I think Algernon would be playing it cool, not letting up that he is aware or, suspicious of eyes on him, and would just kind of go about what looks like him, pouring himself a drink, grabbing an apple or something like that, and just like taking the opportunity to kind of like scan around the room as he moves about.
Give me a study roll here as you do that scan and look across what is an empty seating area where people would normally be.
Okay. Study roll. Yeah, I've only got the 1 dice. 2.
All right. It's empty. There's no one here.
Oh, that's good.
That creeping suspicion is still there. As you put the juice away, pick up your glass, turn to exit, a young child just jumps out at you.
Jumps out at me, like to attack me?
At first, maybe that's what you're thinking, and I think you spill some of the juice on your shirt. This child is a young Avali, and you know this Avali. This is Marissa. She's one of the daughters of the people that work here.
Okay.
And she's giggling. She's like, "Surprise! I got you."
Algernon's like halfway reaching into his lab coat to pull out a blaster as this child jumps out at him, and he lets out a sigh of relief. Algernon has very little patience for, anyone really, especially children. And for one reason or another, Marissa has never really picked up the hint. And just because there's more trouble than it's worth to be, outright antagonistic towards a coworker's child, he's just brushed it off up until this point. But he's definitely not handling the situation with kid gloves, I suppose. And he just like lets out a sigh of relief, and he's like, "Child, I have told you multiple times not to jump out at me. Do you know how quickly I was able to? I was half a second away from pulling this out." And he like shows the blaster and like points it in her face. And it's like, does this not frighten you? Do you have no preservation skills?
As you're pointing this gun in the child's face, her father, Salvador, walks into the room behind her, and she's like, "Marissa, don't go jumping and scare." "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And Salvador is a human male, the adoptive father of Marissa.
Salvador, I beg of you, please keep a closer eye on this child. Startled me. I have a very itchy trigger finger when I'm left alone to my own devices and get startled. Do you please mind? Look, I've got work to do. I do not have time for this.
Yes, Marissa, come here. It's not the time for that. Leave Dr. Blue alone. She runs over to Salvador and ruffles around into a tote bag that he's carrying, and she pulls out a small bouquet of flowers, walks up to you, and goes to give them to you. And in a little childlike wonder of a voice, says, "We will come back for you," as she's handing you these flowers.
Algernon, is a little taken aback, but is more frustrated than he is touched. And again, he looks at the situation, looks at Salvador, and thinks it's more trouble than it's worth to push back on this. So he, puts the blaster back in his coat, and he just kind of snatches at the bouquet and gives a very half-hearted "Thank you, dear," and starts walking back to the operating theater. As he gets to the theater, he probably just kind of throws it onto one of the tables or something like that, out of sight.
I will let you know, you'd be aware that the gifting of flowers during the day of Bloomage is kind of akin to the gifting of presents during Christmas or giving out chocolate Easter eggs at Easter kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Algernon would have gotten many flowers this day of Bloomage?
No. Algernon came here not knowing anybody. He doesn't have many ties to people in general, and he doesn't really have much interest in people. In fact, he has very little regard for human life or the sanctity of it. He finds them to be more distractions than anything else. Again, this seems like more of a it feels like a charade, like a weird kind of social ritual that skirts around the very like base needs of people in general, and he doesn't need it or care for it.
Do you dive back into your work, and a few moments later you get a buzz on your communicator. The name that appears comes up as the director.
I look at the communicator, and I guess this is probably the only instance of being somewhat prompt and beholden to social norms. I answer quite quickly. Yes, sir.
Ah, Dr. Blue. It's good to see that we have at least some dedicated personnel in these times. I've got something I need you to look into. There is some Precursor artifact testing going on down at the Cecil Institute. I've organized you a car. It should be pulling up out the front any minute. I need you to go down, check it out, bring back what you need. And he gives you some contact information as well to go check out. Is there any dialogue you speak back to him?
I kind of like look at my notes that I've got like splayed across my various like tables and shit, and I do like feel a little discouraged initially because I'm like in the middle of stuff. I hate having to like context switch. I'm really in the zone here, but the promise of more artifact testing, new artifacts, does excite Algernon, and he says, "Yes, of course, sir. Any chance of actually acquiring some of these artifacts to bring back to the vault?"
It's just information from an informant that we've gotten so far. Bring back what you find, if there is any to bring back. I trust your judgment, Dr. Blue.
Right away, sir. If there's nothing else, he'll hang up.
I think the director even hangs up as you're saying right away, sir.
Oh yeah, good. He gets me. Yeah, okay. So I mean, as the car's waiting for the car to pull up, I'm just kind of like putting my notes away and just tidying some shit up, getting one of my first aid kits that I've put together, rolling it back up, getting it in my bag and that kind of stuff, getting my I guess like I've got like a more of a doctor's coat as opposed to a lab coat that I dress in when I'm going out and about, and just kind of pack my bag, making sure that I've got my blaster on me, and I head to where I'm getting picked up.
As you head out of the building to see a car pulled up at the front, we're going to run this like a mini job. Tell me what kind of load Algernon would be having in this time. Would it be a light load, a normal load, or a heavy load?
I think he's worked for the director for a bit, so he can kind of read between the lines of some things that he says. When he mentions trusting my discretion, it usually means that there very likely will be some sort of resistance that I may need to deal with. So I'd probably be going a normal load. Yeah, just kind of preparing for having to take some things by force if needed.
Makes sense. As you're waiting out front, the car eventually rocks up for you. It's just a car ride service. There's no flashy decorations on it. It ends up taking you through the main areas to the Cecil Institute. As you're driving down, you're looking out the window. There are flowers decorating all the stores. There's like grand displays in the streets, big signs saying, happy day of Bloomage everywhere, and people just going on about their merriment ways. You see people exchanging flowers, and it's a very festive season outside. That festive feeling follows you to the Cecil Institute as well, as you step out of the car into a grand building, a place of science, discovery, and learning. You are welcomed in by someone working the front desk, and you're taken down to the research areas where you've been instructed to meet up with somebody. You're taken into a room that has the same setup of an MRI system in a normal hospital. So you're in a slightly darkened room with computer monitors looking through a big glass pane window into a more sterile room that has a massive MRI machine in the middle of it. And at the center of this MRI machine is a dark-colored cube just kind of floating there in the middle. Sitting behind the computers in this room is a human researcher, and standing behind them is a figure that you don't quite see their facial expressions. They're wearing a long tunic and a habit over their head, covering their facial, kind of resembling like a nun.
Yeah.
You would know this be a follower of the matron, who is the head of the Engineering's Guild in Erilia.
Right.
Very high-level, high-influence faction. To give you kind of perspective on where they would sit, you're working for the Syndicate, which is roughly a tier 3 faction. Sitting above them is the Concordant, so the ruling faction of this sector, and the only faction above that is the Matron's Engineering Guild.
Yep. Okay.
So you've got these two people here. The receptionist who's walked you down introduces you to the researcher and says, "This is Professor Florence. They've been conducting the experiments that we see here today." And Florence sets up, goes to shake your hand and goes, I didn't expect we have more researchers coming in for this one."
I go to shake her hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Professor." Higher ups just assumed that as many hands on deck would be better safe than sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah, these artifacts can be hard to handle sometimes. And then she sits back down at her computer, looking through the glass window. "You're here just in time. We're about to get the next set of experiments going."
I walk over to look at the screen as well. Excellent. Exciting news. Eager to start.
Excellent. And she presses a button and speaks into one of those little desk microphones. "Can the volunteer please step forward to the artifact as we begin test number 3-7. Just off to the side, inside the MRI machine room, you see Albin step forward, both arms intact at this point. And he steps up to the MRI machine that has this floating cube in the middle of it.
So this cube is not the one that we have on the koi fish, is it?
It does look familiar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Florence does some typing on the computer and then she pushes this little lever forward and you can hear the MRI machine powering up from inside the room. As it begins to reach its power threshold, the cube is starting to separate. So this is a cube, like a Rubik's Cube, a cube made up of cubes.
Yep.
And these little cubes start to separate inside this machine. Florence is typing and goes, "Well, we've amplified the magnetic fields coming out of the MRI machine to do this. We feel if we get to a certain threshold, you know what, have a look. It starts to do these strange things." And it gets to that point and the lights start to flicker. There's a lot of electrical power going through the machine at the moment. As the cube spins around, expands and detaches from itself, right in the middle you see a dark strand, like a negative imprint of the world around you.
In the shape of a strand.
Yep, in the shape of a strand. So these cubes have moved further apart, they're nearly touching the MRI machine, and in the middle of those cubes is this strand that's kind of giving off dark matter, is probably the best way to think of it.
Algernon's leaning on the table, kind of leaning forward a bit in awe. This vision, you just hear him just quietly mutter, fascinating.
Florence turns to the follower of the matron. The follower then just gives a nod, and Florence goes into the microphone again. "Can the volunteer please step forward and describe what you can see inside the strand?" Albin nods towards the window and steps forward. "It's kind of like a negative. Wait, I can see something in there. There's something solid in there." Florence speaks into the microphone again. "Can the volunteer please attempt to grab the item that you see and pull it out?" Albin seems a bit shaky, nods again, and reaches out his right arm. And you can see as he reaches through, it kind of just disappears into the strand. He lets out a agonizing pain, rips his arm back with something inside of it.
Cool.
Florence taps on the keyboards again and begins to shut down the MRI machine. Albin looks like he's wincing in a lot of pain. What's your reaction at seeing this?
Algernon's in awe initially. It's a very rare occurrence to be able to kind of pull something new outside of one of these artifacts that stays manifested after it's inactive. And I'm looking at his arm and I could see that whatever is using him as a host will be like quite a fascinating thing to investigate and discover. He already is very aware of the fact that that thing, like whatever's happened to him, is going to take over the entire body. He's not entirely sure if the sister like knows exactly the extent of which these eldritch precursor artifacts are incredibly dangerous to human life, whether they care. But Algernon doesn't. He's just more excited about the fact as to what this patient's going to be when this mass fully takes over.
Do you go into the room to check on Albin, or do you wait for him to come out?
I take a look at Sister and I say, "Are you all right if I go in and investigate the effect it has on his body?"
She doesn't respond verbally to you. She puts out her hand, palm facing up, gesturing for you to go in.
I grab my bag and I walk on in.
Thank you for making it through another episode. We'd love to hear your feedback on the show. If you have any questions or theories you'd like to discuss, then leave us a message in the comments of your favourite podcasting platform, and we'll do our best to reply when we can. Otherwise, come hang out with us on Instagram under the handle Placeholder NPCs. Background music for this episode is by Sasha End, opening credits by Feslian Studios, and sound effects by Zapsplat.com. All the links are in the episode description.